Do you recognize anything here? Your obvious answer would be no, but you can't help but shake the feeling that you've seen this before. These images tend to invoke an appeal of nostalgia, but with an often eerie and surreal undertone. This is what is known as a liminal space. Liminal space refers to the place a person is in during a transitional period. It's a gap and can be physically, emotionally, or metaphorically. In the layman's terms, these places represent the idea of the in-between space. It can be anything you can think of off the top of your head, like an abandoned parking lot, mall, movie theater, even anything as simple as a swimming pool. All they have to have in common is that it gives a feeling of nostalgia, but with an uneasy and surreal tone to it. But you may be asking yourself, why? Why does it give off such an unsettling vibe to them? Well, it's really simple. It's due to the fact that the mind is giving off a feeling, like something is hiding in plain sight, that the space doesn't feel quite right, or even safe, as if you have to run, hide, or, in some cases, press onward into the unknown. These sensations are what drives us to seek out more of these liminal spaces, either out of curiosity of what could be or what was the meaning of the memory from childhood. Think back to a time when you were younger, a moment of peace as well as familiarity. Your family has just taken you to your favorite place to visit, one that gives off a sense of joy and euphoria. But now, cut to the present day. This place that once brought you laughter and hope, now decayed, abandoned, and rotting. Rotting away, forgotten. Well, almost forgotten. You still remember it, don't you? You still yearn for the tender embrace, that joyful stir of peace and happiness, don't you? Granted, your perception is now completely different, but those memories still linger with you and you alone. Go on then. Venture forth and search for that smile you had lost long ago. Why are people so familiar with these? It's mostly memories. But it's also due to these forms of media known as dreamcore and weirdcore. Both stem from surreal aesthetics that give off a nostalgic feeling. In fact, the backrooms play a big part into liminal spaces due to their specific levels. Some examples being level 9, where it's an endless dark suburban neighborhood, and level 94 being simple houses atop green hills, blue skies, and white picket fences. These two examples are what we think about as liminal spaces. So, where did the history part of liminal spaces originate from? Well, to quote parts of a wiki article, don't make fun of me, it had gained popularity 4 or 5 years ago in 2019 when a short creepypasta of unknown origin appeared on 4chan and had began to go viral. The post had shown a photo of a room with yellow wallpaper and what appears to be a damp-looking carpet and lights fixated upon the ceiling. In today's day and age, we recognize this photo as the backrooms, but before it was just a simple room that gave off a feeling of liminality. After that, the popularity of liminal spaces would start to grow into its own cult following, as well as seeping into other media aesthetics. As of November 2022, a subreddit was made named r/liminal space. During a short amount of time, it gained over 500,000 members, along with a Twitter bot called @SpaceLiminalBot, which occurred over 1.2 million followers. Even today, both places are growing in traction, even as far as going onto TikTok and other platforms. Not too long ago, 2 games on Steam featuring this phenomena appeared on their store page. These games will be called Interior Worlds and Animaliopolis. I'd highly recommend checking out these games if you are someone who is fascinated about this subject. Not sponsored, by the way. Now that we went over the history and background of liminal spaces, let's begin to separate these words, to break them down as singular entities. Liminal, relating to or situated at a sensory threshold, barely perceptible or capable of eliciting a response, of relating to or being an intermediate state, phase, or condition in between transitional, quote, in the liminal state between life and death, end quote. When liminal first appeared in written use, it referred to something such as physical stimulus, which was just barely perceptible or just barely capable of eliciting a response. This meaning is still in use today in constructions like, quote, liminal auditory stimuli, end quote. The word comes from the noun limen, which refers to the point at which a physiological or psychological effect begins to be produced. In its most common extended meaning now, it's described a state, place, or condition of transition, as in the, quote, the liminal zone between sleep and wakefulness, end quote. The closely related word subliminal means, quote, below a threshold, end quote. It can describe something inadequate to produce a sensation, or something operating below a threshold of consciousness. Space or spaces, a period of time, also its duration, a limited extent in 1, 2, or 3 dimensions, distance, area, and volume, an extent set apart or available, parking space or floor space, a boundless 3-dimensional extent in which objects and events occur and have relative position and direction, infinite space or time. With both definitions and facts, we can understand why these 2 words are combined. Although you're probably pondering on one example used, that being in the liminal state between life and death. Why would the word liminal be used if that's one of its definitions? Well, oddly enough, liminal spaces can be interpreted as someone's personal purgatory, or seeing their life flash before their eyes, witnessing a time or era in their life that they are familiar with, while a transition to the afterlife. This might be why you may see themes of death intertwined with images or videos with liminal spaces in them. Or it could also become one's own personal hell. So, with what we now know about liminal spaces, we ask ourselves these few questions. Is it a simple area? Is it a transition between life or death? Or are they the hells we create? The answer's never truly clear. One thing I ask you, dear viewer, have you been here before?